Well, when it comes to mental health issues, many Gen Z young adults say instead of suffering in silence, they are posting their struggles online, especially when it comes to anxiety. My next guest, Dr. Daniel Amen, is a physician, psychiatrist, and one of the foremost experts on brain health, and is a brain imaging pioneer with the world's largest database of brain scans for psychiatry, totaling more than 250,000 SPECT scans on patients from 155 different countries. He's also a dear friend of mine. Please welcome Dr. Dan Amen. Now, Dr. Amen, you say you're horrified at the level of diagnoses this generation is receiving.
So according to the CDC, 57% of teenage girls report being persistently sad. Think of that. More than half, 32% have thought of killing themselves, 24% have planned to kill themselves, and 13% have tried. This is unlike anything before in human history, and it's horrifying. Now, bad things have been happening in the world since the world began, but now children have access to it at a moment's notice. So worrying about school shootings. Anytime there's a school shooting, immediately it's on the news, it's on social media. These devices, so phones, video games, social media, they're wearing out the pleasure centers in their brain, actually thrilling them to death. And when you get a notification, it puts a little dopamine on the pleasure center. But the more you do it, the stronger that becomes. It begins to wear these centers out, and you just feel flat. You feel uncomfortable, you feel sad, you feel anxious. And I always think of my patients in 4 big circles. What's the biology of this? What's the psychology of this? What's the social circle and the spiritual circle? And social media actually attacks all 4 of those circles.
Yeah, and let's take a look at this. You're talking about 4 different areas where the function occurs. The biological, which is brain and body. Social media impacts here. There's a tech addiction, and that's where you're saying that we're actually getting so overstimulated because there's immediate feedback on everything. This isn't a good thing.
No, because it's wearing out the centers in your brain that are meant to keep you happy and motivated.
Yeah, and this also includes like drugs and poor nutrition and all that. Then the social, the connections and the stress. This has to do with overprotective parents, loneliness, isolation, and social media, dating apps, that sort of thing. And we're much more socially conscious now than we were 10 years ago, right?
Absolutely. And then there are the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, and we're filled with them. And then if you turn on the news, the anchors are filled with them as well. So we're being modeled this undisciplined thinking.
Yeah, and then the spiritual. Lack of connection to a higher power, and you feel like life really has no meaning outside that moment, outside what's going on at the time.
50% of young people feel like their life has no meaning. That is horrifying, and that contributes to the anxiety and depression that they feel.
Okay, when you're talking about wearing ourselves out, the pleasure centers, you're actually talking about the brain structures, right?
Physically.
Yeah.
It's an area called the nucleus accumbens, and it responds to dopamine. But if you push on it too much, too hard, it begins to wear it out, and then you need more and more excitement to feel anything at all, which sets you up for an addiction.
Yeah, okay. So I want everybody to think about these 4 circles as we move forward, because there are a lot of ways to divide up where you function. Where do you think your biggest area is that would be a problem for you? Which of the 4 would be your number 1 friction?
It would probably be the social connections and stresses.
And how about you?
I would say psychological.
Okay, social and psychological. All right. Next, Sevi's mother is here. And she has dedicated her life to helping her daughter and others, actually, struggling with anxiety. We're going to find out why she believes parents can either be part of the problem or part of the solution to help an anxious generation. We'll add her after the break. $36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today.
When I was younger, I had really bad separation anxiety from my mom. It has always been the fear of the unknown for me. I didn't know when my mom was coming home. She always came home. It was just kind of the fear of what could happen. I couldn't even go to sleepovers. I would wake up in the middle of the night and have my friends' parents call my mom at like 2 o'clock in the morning so I could go home.
When it comes to a child suffering with anxiety or any mental health problem for that matter, being a parent can feel like you are on an island and alone with no rescue in sight. Now, Sevi's mother, Laura, says she knows the feeling all too well because it's how she felt while desperately trying to help her own daughter.
When Sevi was a baby, I started to notice certain behaviors that became alarming to me. When she was a toddler, the smallest things would set her off. Her reactions were very grand and very dramatic. She was hurting so much, but I didn't understand why. I would, watch her just fall apart, fall to the ground, crumble, go into this like almost fetal position. And it was very, very hard for me. When Sevi was entering her teenage years, she spoke the words, "I can't do this anymore. I don't know if I want to live." And that's a really scary thing for parents to hear. I thought that I was failing as a parent. I was letting my child down until I took her to somebody that said, your child has anxiety, right? It was like this bell went off. We just weren't talking about it. And once I had opened that door to have those conversations, it was a difference maker for all of us. There's always been a stigma around anxiety and mental health. Today, that stigma is less and less because Gen Z, they want to talk about it. The more we can normalize it, the quicker we can get to some resolutions on it. Anxiety will always be a part of Sevi's life, but if she can help others feel seen and heard and not alone, and that's really what it's all about.
You've made it a real focus in your life to help not only your daughter, but others. If you were going to talk about the 2 or 3 things that you've really learned, what would they be?
I'm so grateful that you're shining a light on this subject. It's so important that we talk about it. What I learned was that Sevi and I needed a common language to talk about this, because when we talk about mental health, it means something different to everybody, right? So I wanted to have a common language that worked for us. The other thing that I learned is that I had to learn to acknowledge that what Sevi was feeling was very real for her, even if I didn't understand it. Those feelings were authentic for her. And I think as a parent, so often we try to process through our more mature brains, and they're just not there yet. And so that was a big lesson for me, was to allow Sevi to feel what she was feeling and not try to fix everything.
Yeah. First off, I want to comment on the documentary that you made, Anxious Nation. I've seen this, and I have to tell you, I think this is an absolute Triumph. I think it is absolutely brilliant, and I'll tell you why. It has a message that says we've got to meet these kids where they are and not ask them to meet us where we are in our understanding. It's a game changer, and I think it is something that every parent that's dealing with this should watch. If we want this generation to survive in a competitive world, we have to start preparing them. It isn't just, oh, get over it. We have to give you coping skills, tools to actually do this with.